I got a package in from Right Stuff Anime, and right off the bat we're gonna go off into a little bit of a tangent. I've never once read or watched JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, except for one episode. I saw episode 1 of season 1, and then I immediately stopped watching. I'm sure some people would find that blasphemous. They're probably right. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna right my wrong today. I've ordered part 1 of JoJo, the manga, and we're gonna read the whole thing. And we're gonna do a little unboxing here. No second cam today, because I didn't feel like it. You know how it is. Yes. Volumes 1, 2, and 3 of part 1 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Phantom Blood. The one thing that always struck me about the JoJo manga is just how well made they are. Like these are quality, I'm really going to enjoy, I think, reading these. I'm gonna try to pace myself a bit, just try to enjoy the experience fully. But yeah, if you guys want to see more parts to this too, just let me know in the comments and I'll buy the rest of the series, I guess. So let's catch up to my opinions on part 1, then I guess I've probably finished reading it when the next cut happens. So I just finished reading volume 1 of part 1 of JoJo's, and it's interesting. It's very interesting. Just the concept of it starting off in 1800s England I thought was pretty interesting. Partway along the way they kind of talk about Jack the Ripper and then don't bring it up again. I'm sure they'll bring it up at some point, or maybe they were just talking about it for fun. I don't know. So the whole precipice of the story is that there's this Aztec society in the beginning, millions of years ago, and they create this mask that has the ability to give you godlike powers and drain the life of others. And they describe it as such. And then later on, our main villain, Dio, gets the mask, and he figures out that it turns them into vampires. Just straight up vampires. Just normal, run-of-the-mill vampires. I think it started to lose its focus a bit after they introduced vampires. Some of the art is a little bit interesting. It's, for me at least, it was a little bit difficult to understand what was happening a lot of the time. I just feel like there was a lot of action, but the action would often take up the entire panel, which kind of just made it a little bit difficult to see what was happening. That's just me. I'm sure it wasn't like that for others, but yeah, that's just kind of how I saw it. He didn't really know what he was trying to focus on with each panel, but it was written in the 80s. Art changes over time, style changes over time. Araki's art certainly has changed since then. I can't really complain that much. It's not too bad. I thought the story was, it was interesting. It just kind of felt like the focus was lost a bit, during some parts. Like, do we want to focus on Dio tormenting Jonathan, or are we going to skip 7 years ahead and now they're just pretending that they're friends, right? And in that 7 years, he restrained himself from making his life a living hell. What, then that, month period at the beginning of the book, or however long it was, is the only time he tormented him, and then 7 years he was pretending to be nice to him? I felt like that was a little bit odd. They're also super buff and Hulk sized, the Hulk, the Incredible Hulk. They have legs the size of the fucking Hulk. Keep in mind, right, by the time that they're in college together and on the same football team, they don't have any special powers. They're just dudes, but they've got these tree trunk sized legs, and it's kind of insane how one could even hope to get gains like that. But beyond that, I think it's going in a good direction. Just hope they don't change the power system anytime soon. I know they will. That's my thoughts on volume 1 of part 1. We've got 2 more to go, and when I'm done with all 3 volumes, I'll give my thoughts on part 1 as a whole. I'll have better collected thoughts for that. So yeah, I just finished volume 2 of part 1 of JoJo. It continues to be interesting. So I think volume 1 started off really, I don't want to say roughly. It's just I would understand why, people starting out would drop it from part 1. It starts out really slow, but not in a slice of life kind of way. In a, I don't appreciate what's happening to these characters and, where's this going kind of way. The whole, the mask is introduced in the very first pages of part of volume 1, but the payoff from that isn't until the very last couple of pages. So the mask gives Dio these vampire-like powers, and Jojo is able to fight against a vampire, which we're later told that he has insane power from the mask. And Jojo's just able to fight Dio without having any kind of special ability. Then later on, when he gets Hammond, and Hammond is introduced in Volume 2, then he's more able to hold his own, but he wasn't able to defeat Dio like he does at the beginning of the book. Near the end of it, Dio is said to have 5 times the power of Jojo, even though Jojo nearly killed him in the collapsing fire. So I think that was a little weird. But it does get more interesting. Once some action starts to happen, it's easier to read. I still had the issue of the panels being a little difficult to read, not the words, but the images. It was kind of hard. It's still kind of hard to see what's happening. There's a lot of really dark gray tones, and it kind of all blends together. So I'm still kind of having that issue as I'm reading. I'm getting the gist of the story. I think it's going in a good direction. I'm enjoying it more than Volume 1 at least. I liked Zeppeli. Speedwagon has been pretty decent. A pretty decent character so far. And they did continue the Jack the Ripper plot line, as I mentioned in the last time I was on camera, that they kind of just brought that up and didn't go anywhere with it. Well, they have gone somewhere with it now, but he was defeated very easily. Something I found weird is at the very end of the book, they dedicate like 4 or 5 pages to these 2 zombie knights that Dio resurrects, and I found it really weird that they decided to build on their characters, because I know at the beginning of Volume 3 they're gonna get, I just know they're gonna get defeated, so like I don't really see the point in building them up like that. But it's whatever. It's fine. It's not bad. There's people who say part 1 is bad. I don't think it's bad so far, at least. We'll see how the ending goes. Bye. The words will make you out and out. So I just finished Volume 3 of Part 1 of JoJo's. It was an interesting way to end the series, let's say. I think the way it ended with Jonathan's death felt a little shoehorned. Like, he finally defeats Dio, and then he's like getting married to Irina or whatever. But then Dio cuts his own head off, and he gets placed into a jar, Futurama style, and is hidden in a box and goes on the boat. His zombies try to defeat Jonathan, and Jonathan blows up the ship and dies with Dio. But like, did we really need it to end like that? Did we really need floating head Dio to come back one more time after being defeated again by Jonathan? Besides that, it was fine. Yet again, I had the problem of not being able to really see what was going on with the drawings. Maybe that's just my fault at this point. Yeah, it was a decent way to end it. I liked Volume 2 the best, honestly, out of all the volumes in Part 1. I'm gonna go on to my overall thoughts of the series now. I spent the day away. So I don't think Part 1 of JoJo's is nearly as bad as people say. It has some slow parts, particularly the very beginning of Volume 1. The way that starts off is enough to get someone who's just getting into the series to just stop reading completely or skip to a completely other part, you know? Because if we're thinking about it, I feel like you'd really only need to read a synopsis of Part 1, and then you'd be able to just go into Part 2. So I don't think it has like a really important place story-wise for JoJo overall, but it has an important place in the history of manga and anime. The people who have criticisms of Part 1, they need to remember that JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 1, at least, is from the 1980s. You know, it was serialized in Jump magazine every week. And I think that dispels my problem of not being able to see the panels all the way. It's because they were printed on much larger pages back then than they are now. So that's probably one of my complaints kind of taken away there. But yeah, it's of its time. Araki's art style has improved since then. I think his storytelling abilities are probably improved since then. We'll see. I think Part 1 doesn't really deserve the hate it gets sometimes online. I enjoyed it. I think the story's pacing could have been handled a bit differently. It's a 40-year-old story. I don't really know what else I could say about that, you know. Imagine you had worked on something 40 years ago, and you know, you're just starting out, whatever. It's just, you know, it's the beginning of your work, really. And then 40 years later, people are still criticizing you for that thing you did 40 years ago. Man, that would be terrible. I mean, I don't think anything I do now, and that would be examined 40 years from now, could compare to even Part 1 of JoJo. So you gotta give him credit where it's due. I mean, it was 40 years ago. What do you want from him, man? I don't know. I liked it though. It definitely shined the brightest during action sequences. I don't think he really had a handle on the sort of slice of life sequences at that point. I think it's worth a read if you haven't read it. I just want to share with you a quote from volume 1 that I really liked. Let's see here. This is my favorite quote from part 1 of Jojo's Bizarre Adventure. Jojo went up to his room and slept for 2 hours. And after he woke up, he lay there for a bit and remembered that Danny was dead and cried. Yeah, that's my favorite quote. I don't know why. Maybe it's a little messed up, but I laughed when I read that the first time. It's relatable, you know? Now, another thing I really love about these hardcovers specifically is that every so often you get these really well done, maybe 4 or 5 pages where the only like color, oh, that's kind of dreadful looking. I'll do a better close-up. The only color you get is like this like nice orange, kind of reddish. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. That happens in all 3 volumes, is that we get, you know, a little bit of that coloration on some maybe it's not always on the most important of sequences. Sometimes it is. I thought that was a nice attention to detail with this version specifically. Yeah, if you see this in a store or something, I would suggest picking it up if you've never gotten into JoJo. And even if you like JoJo but don't, collect things physically, it's a nice piece to just have on the shelf. I will be continuing this series, going into part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. 6 isn't out yet on hardcover, but we'll get up to part 5. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. I'm a bit of a noob to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, as you can probably tell. I'm hoping to, get a handle for the rest of the series. Maybe I'll watch the anime at some point. Thank you guys. Subscribe, maybe? Maybe. Bye.